Kavanaugh, the Kavanaugh case. Do you know the New York Times has already ran an op-ed about impeaching Kavanaugh? Impeaching Kavanaugh. I swear the framers of our Constitution will be rolling in their graves. They are rolling in their graves. They cannot, I'm sure, believe what's taking place here. It's written by a professor at the University of Alabama School of Law, by Ronald Krotosinski, Jr., not to be confused with Sr. Here's what he writes. So, and by the way, this is a constant, unmitigated attack at every level on Republican government, and that you folks who voted for Trump and against Hillary Clinton are illegitimate. It doesn't matter how you vote. You know, the left and the Democrats like to talk about the franchise and that any effort by a state to clean up the voter rolls, to make sure only citizens can vote, and to make sure somebody's name isn't on 14 different state, voter rolls, that is an attempt, of course, to suppress the vote, particularly minorities. It's incomprehensible how that is an attempt to suppress the vote of anybody. The goal is to protect the franchise for those who have a right to vote. And yet, when you do vote, and an election is won fair and square, they spend the entire time of this presidency trying to reverse the vote. They've attacked the Electoral College, and they're trying to permanently damage that institution. They've unleashed a special counsel against the president. It's their pressure on Rosenstein who buckled to it. And they have all kinds of plans in the House of Representatives to try and undermine this president and eviscerate his policies, which you voted for. And now they're telling you, through this egghead, that even if Kavanaugh is confirmed, we should be prepared for his impeachment. And here's what the guy writes. Charles Grassley, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, seem determined to call a vote next week on the confirmation of Judge Brett Kavanaugh to be an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, even in the face of this week's sexual assault allegations against him. Now, this is a law professor. This is a law professor who apparently is wholly unfamiliar with our Constitution and the rule of law. Here, I'm going to tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, that is enshrined in our justice system. You don't get to just make allegations. You don't get to just make allegations. You're going to make an allegation, a criminal allegation, you tell the cops. You're going to make any other kind of allegation that isn't criminal in nature, you go to court in a civil case. You don't get to make an allegation, it just hangs out there. And by the way, the Senate Judiciary Committee is not some objective jury. And in the end, they don't get to decide this either. It is a political process that they're involved in now, highly politicized, highly partisan. They've already burned down our traditions when it comes to the judicial confirmation process. And not a single Democrat will vote for Kavanaugh, and every one of these damn Democrats on this committee has essentially announced that they believe the accuser, without anything more, despite the fact that she remembers nothing. Despite the fact that her lawyers are Democrat liberal hacks. Despite the fact we now know she's being advised by a Democrat operative. He goes on, this professor. Senate Republicans assume correctly that if they can hold the party line, his installation on the Supreme Court is a sure thing. This is certainly true. Even if the Democratic caucus in the Senate holds firm against Mr. Kavanaugh, they simply lack the votes to block him. But the Republicans' calculus contains a significant error, namely the assumption that if Mr. Kavanaugh is confirmed to the Supreme Court, that's the end of the discussion of whether he is fit to serve. You see, there's never any end to their discussion. Constitution does provide that federal judges, including Supreme Court justices, quote, shall hold their offices during good behavior, unquote. The settled understanding of this phrase is the so-called Article 3 judges enjoy lifetime tenure. But the Constitution also makes both judicial and executive officers subject to impeachment. And as it happens, the House of Representatives holds the, quote, sole power of impeachment, unquote. If the Democrats win back the House in November, they can exercise that power. Impeachment proceedings in the House are investigative in nature and come with a full panoply of quasi-judicial powers, including aids to investigations, such as the power to subpoena witnesses to compel them to appear and testify, subject, of course, to constitutional privileges, if applicable, such as the Fifth Amendment's guarantee against self-incrimination. If a simple majority of the House decided to proceed with impeachment, the House Judiciary Committee would be empowered to conduct a thorough and careful investigation of the sexual misconduct allegations that Professor Christine Blasey Ford has made against Mr. Kavanaugh involving a drunken sexual assault when both were high school students in suburban Washington, D.C. Nor should the Democrats wait to formally take control of the House in January. The House this guy's in a hurry. The House Democratic leadership should pledge now that if they win a majority, they will conduct an impeachment investigation to get to the truth. Doing so today would make clear to the Senate Republicans that if they rush to judgment in the absence of a full and fair investigation, there will still be an investigation. To be sure, he writes, the impeachment of a Supreme Court justice is a rare thing in our democracy. The last member of the Supreme Court to face a credible threat of impeachment was Associate Justice Abe Fortas, whom Lyndon Johnson had nominated to replace Earl Warren as Chief Justice. Credible allegations of financial misconduct involving a lifetime paid consultancy with the Wolfson Foundation were made against Fortas. Wolfson was facing federal criminal charges that could easily have found their way to the Supreme Court. Was that, plus he was serving as an unofficial advisor to the President of the United States while he was on the Supreme Court, as well as taking about $20,000 a year from this foundation funded in part by this crook. Those are facts, not allegations. Under withering bipartisan criticism, Justice Fortas withdrew his nomination, so he wasn't impeached, and ultimately resigned from the Supreme Court. Had he not resigned, there's a good chance he would have been impeached. Right, what he did was crooked. The only justice to be impeached was Samuel Chase, who was accused in 1804 of allowing his partisan views to affect his decisions. But the effort to oust him failed in the Senate. Now that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I know of no other Supreme Court justice who was impeached. Not even Roger Taney in the Dred Scott decision. The Chief Justice then. So here's another institution that the left wants to burn down. They talk about an independent judiciary. You're not even allowed to criticize the judiciary if you're conservative. But here, they're already talking about impeachment. Of course, he writes, even if the House impeached Kavanaugh, it would still take a two-thirds majority in the Senate to convict and remove him from the court, which won't happen, ladies and gentlemen. But the Senate vote would surely have at least something to do with the merits of the House's case. If a full and fair investigation shows that Mr. Kavanaugh has lied regarding the incident, he's denied it categorically and says nothing even remotely like it ever occurred, Republican senators may find it hard to vote no in the Me Too era. Be a terrible blow to the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, of course, but this is the risk that Senators McConnell and Grassley seem willing to take. Incredible, is it not? Let's just back up a second. If Dianne Feinstein had come forward with that letter a month and a half ago, when Kavanaugh was meeting senators, or if she had come forth with that letter during the hearings process, the law professor doesn't mention any of this, it would have been part of the hearings process, as detestable as it is. Law professor doesn't say that the reason they held back is because Chuck Schumer obviously advised them to hold back, to create this crunch time. The Republicans, to their credit, so far, aren't biting. So this law professor wants to take it to the next level. He wants to take it to the next level. Nor does he explain exactly what it is that he's looking for. Now, it would be fascinating to know, because maybe Dr. Ford, Professor Ford, has a remarkable recollection, all of a sudden, of something she couldn't remember 2 minutes ago, which is when this occurred, where this occurred, any corroborating witnesses, anybody she may have spoken to, because so far the answer is she doesn't know, she doesn't know, she doesn't know, and no. Speaking through her lawyers. She went to the Washington Post weeks and weeks ago. Let's continue. He goes on, moreover, an impeachment investigation could also encompass allegations that Mr. Kavanaugh has committed perjury before the Senate twice, related to his work on the nomination of District Judge Charles Pickering to be a judge on the Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. Under oath, both in 2006 and 2018, he said he had no involvement with the White House strategy sessions associated with Judge Pickering's nominations. Subsequently released emails involving these sessions suggest that these answers were at best misleading and at worst totally false. No, they weren't. And no, they weren't. So you can see this guy's a hack, this law professor. Attending a strategy session as a White House staffer is not a crime. Lying under oath to the Senate Judiciary Committee, on the other hand, is perjury would be a perfectly justifiable and constitutional basis for impeachment. So Trump should be impeached for nothing. Kavanaugh should be impeached if he's confirmed. Who else? Maxine Waters says Pence should be taken out with impeachment. You understand what's going on here, right, ladies and gentlemen? You're not allowed to win elections. They want to disenfranchise you. They want complete monopolistic control over the courts, especially the Supreme Court. And any time now, in the future, a Republican wins the presidency, not just Trump, but any. They're going to do everything they can to delegitimize that Republican unless they're of the sorts of, say, a Susan Collins or a Bob Corker or a Jeff Flake. The professor goes on. An important caveat. Congress must take care to maintain the constitutional convention that has existed since the failed impeachment of Justice Chase. Federal judges, including members of the Supreme Court, should not be impeached based on their judicial rulings or philosophy. See? Accordingly, if the House were to initiate impeachment proceedings against Justice Kavanaugh in 2019, such proceedings should be strictly limited to questions associated with his alleged intentional and deliberate efforts to mislead the Senate about his character and fitness. So now, you see, Kavanaugh's guilty. Guilty. And listen to this. Congress must take care to maintain the constitutional convention that has existed since the failed impeachment of Justice Chase. We do not know the truth of the troubling allegations against Judge Kavanaugh, but before someone is confirmed to the Supreme Court, good faith efforts to discover the truth should be made. And if the Senate won't conduct a credible investigation now, the House should offer its assistance next year. Professor Ronald J. Krotozinski, Jr., University of Alabama School of Law. You also going to try and impeach Clarence Thomas, pal? Is this what's going on? Through immigration, attacks on state efforts to ensure the legitimacy of voters, through criminalizing politics, with people like Mueller, through impeachment. What is it here? You want to cleanse the political system of people who reject or oppose the progressive agenda? That is exactly right. They also want to destroy the Electoral College, where if a candidate wins a majority of the vote in a particular state, all Electoral College votes go to that candidate, as opposed to congressional districts. They got all kinds of designs on our Constitution, ladies and gentlemen, while they pretend to support it. I'll be right back. So, just as the Democrats were preparing for Trump's impeachment before he was sworn in, it appears the Democrats are preparing for Kavanaugh's impeachment before there's even a vote in the committee and in the United States Senate. You know, when I use this phrase silent coup and coined that phrase, and others have now used it, and that's a good thing. I meant it. I meant it. They talk about illegitimate elections, George W. Bush, Donald Trump. They want to attack and change the Electoral College. They have a whole group put together that's heavily funded to destroy the Electoral College. They insist on having voter rolls where people are on the list who shouldn't be on the list because they shouldn't be voting. They're not citizens, or they're on numerous state lists. Any effort to fix that is called voter suppression. When they want voter ID, it's called voter suppression. When they delay the presentation of information that they claim is utterly crucial to this confirmation proceeding, and yet it is they who delay it for a month and a half and spring it on the Republicans and the country, really, after the hearings are over, then they claim it's unfair, that we're trying to rush things when it comes to the Kavanaugh hearings. We'll be right back. Now, there's constant talk by the left, by the media, by the left-wing media, and by professors and their ilk about impeachment. There's never any talk about expulsion from Congress. Expulsion. Expulsion from Congress. There's never any talk about it. Now, let's take a look at this. Booker's push for Kavanaugh vote delay called out over his 1992 column detailing teenage groping. Now, what in the world does that mean? What in the world does that mean? New Jersey Democratic Senator Cory Booker is facing accusations of hypocrisy over his calls to delay the confirmation vote of Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh amid sexual misconduct allegations, as he once admitted groping a friend without her consent in high school. Now, this is back in high school. Shouldn't he be expelled from the United States Senate? The senator who urged the Senate Judiciary Committee to first let the FBI conduct an investigation after California prosecutor Christine Blasey Ford accused the High Court nominee of sexual assault over 35 years ago, once wrote an article detailing an incident where he groped a female friend. This is Fox now, and they're citing an actual article by Cory Booker in the Stanford Daily in 1992. Quote from the article, or a column. New Year's Eve 1984, writes Booker, I will never forget. I was 15. As the ball dropped, I leaned over to hug a friend, and she met me instead with an overwhelming kiss. As we fumbled upon the bed, I remember debating my next move as if it were a chess game, Booker wrote in the student-run Stanford Daily newspaper in 1992. With the Top Gun slogan ringing in my head, I slowly reached for her breast. After having my hand pushed away once, I reached my mark, he continued, without explaining what he meant by his mark, although I think we can infer it. Our groping ended soon, and while no relationship ensued, a friendship did. You see, the next week in school she told me that she was drunk that night and didn't really know what she was doing, he added. Booker's intent of the column was to detail his transformation from a 15-year-old who was trotting around the bases and stealing second, quote-unquote, to someone who was called a, quote, man-hater over his pro-women views. In retrospect, my soliloquy, titled The Oppressive Nature of Male-Dominated Society and Its Violent Manifestations, Rape, so forth, may have been a supercilious attempt to convince her that I was a sensitive man, but more likely I was trying to convince myself that my attitudes had changed, he wrote. The now senator came back to the topic a few months later in 1992, penning another article that mentioned the controversial column, which he said was about date rape, and admitted that his actions were at odds with his beliefs. But my second column, as I raised my noble pen to address the issue of date rape, I realized that the person holding it wasn't so noble after all, he wrote. This issue, as with so many others, a dash of sincere introspection, has revealed to me a dangerous gap, a gap between my beliefs and my actions. Now, these columns by Booker, a potential 2020 presidential contender, have resurfaced after he became one of the leading voices of the Democratic opposition against Kavanaugh's confirmation. And following allegations of sexual misconduct against Kavanaugh, which he vehemently denied, Booker said the accusations are serious, credible, and deeply troubling. After the committee vote was delayed and Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley invited both Ford and Kavanaugh to testify on Monday, Booker called for an FBI investigation before holding a hearing. So, what do you think of that? How come we never talk about expulsion in the United States Senate? Never. Ted Kennedy, they never expelled Ted Kennedy. They never expelled any of these people. They don't even try to expel them. But they're very loose-lipped when it comes to impeachment. The President of the United States hasn't done anything criminal or impeachable. Zero. Brett Kavanaugh is a victim right now. His wife is a victim. His little girls are victims. His mother and father are victims. Our entire justice system is built around a process, standards that are in place to protect the accused from the accuser. The accuser must prove their case. And if the accuser, at least in the public revelation so far, through her lawyers, through her surrogates, is somebody whose memory is utterly failing as to the event alleged, as to the time, the place, and all the rest of it, it is Mr. Kavanaugh who is the victim. And as I said yesterday, in a court of law, Dr. Ford's allegation would be thrown out. There's no corroboration. There's nothing. There's nothing. You can't convict somebody in any form if you don't have the facts, let alone the evidence. The Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee are busy pushing criminal justice reform, as are many Republicans, some in the White House. Criminal justice reform. People who've actually been convicted, who've had their day in court, who've pled or been sentenced and are in prison. They tell us that they're unjustly for minor crimes. And they want tens of thousands of them to be released. Terrorists who are captured, who are known terrorists and treated like terrorists at Guantanamo Bay and so forth and so on. They have advocates in our Congress. You don't treat people this way, even subhumans, you see. Mass murders get their day in court. Look at the Bill of Rights, some of them. They apply to you, they apply to me, they apply to everybody. And the Bill of Rights are there, and they're in place to protect individuals against charges, criminal charges, warrants, probable cause, due process, the right not to testify against yourself, jury of your peers, and so forth. All that's right there. Now, what is that for? It's to protect all of us from people who make allegations. The fact that Democrat senators who were involved in the delay of presenting this information during the course of the hearing pretend that they're objective jurors who want to sit there and just get the facts, you see, when they've already said the accuser's credible. They haven't even met the accuser, most of them. The accuser's credible, and the accused apparently is not, is really outrageous. They've already announced guilty. They've already announced that they have no interest in Kavanaugh being on the Supreme Court, by hook or by crook. As I said the other day, Chuck Schumer is the real lawyer representing the accuser in this case. He's orchestrating the entire thing in the shadows. And again, how do we know? Because if you go to the appendix in Men in Black, my first book, you will see the memos. The memos that were surrounding numerous confirmation battles over George W. Bush nominees to the circuit court. And you will see how they operate. Very sleazy. Durbin is in the memos. He's still there. Schumer's in the memos. He's still there. Leahy's in the memo. He's still there. This is what they do. And now, of course, you're not even permitted to question the accuser because the accuser's a female. And now, of course, every man is guilty of some kind of sexual assault or sexual harassment, except those who throw in with the left. Something's now wrong with white men, particularly old white men. And this is your jury. The Senate Democrats, the Democrats dressed up as journalists, and all the rest of them. And now they're talking about impeaching Kavanaugh before there's even a vote in the Senate Judiciary Committee to get him out of committee onto the floor of the United States Senate. I asked yesterday, and I ask you again today, what if this was your father, your husband, your boyfriend, your son, your grandson? All males are born of women. It just is. Despite the liberal agenda to try and confuse us on gender and so forth, all males are born of females. And mothers protect their sons. Wives protect their husbands. Girlfriends protect their boyfriends. And right now, an allegation is enough. Well, ladies and gentlemen, some of us have to speak out against the mob. Some of us have to say no. Some of us have to say enough is enough. Enough is enough. Now, this accuser is obviously being directed by the Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's all orchestrated. You see, they come out and defend every decision she, quote unquote, and her lawyers, quote unquote, make. Why? Because they know in advance. She's being told how to manipulate the committee, how to manipulate the politics. She's had numerous positions now. She wants to testify, her lawyer says, then she doesn't want to testify, her other lawyer says. Committee says, okay, we'll come talk to you, you can testify in closed session, in open session, but we want to get this done Monday. Well, now we need an FBI investigation. Yeah, the Democrats say, that's the ticket. We need an FBI investigation. And if you don't agree, you're not really looking for the facts and you're bullying her, that's because you're a bunch of sexist sexual harassers. Old white men. Okay. Then, okay, I'll testify. Her handlers say she'll testify. But not on Monday. Well, what's with not on Monday. Since when does a witness or a potential witness get to dictate the terms of a Senate committee and their hearing schedule? I've never seen anything like this. She came forward, says she wanted to be kept secret, winds up going to the Washington Post. It winds up being leaked by Feinstein or somebody. They have delayed this whole thing for a month and a half. Then they complain somebody's rushing when they withheld the information. Now you have a kook professor writing out of Alabama that Kavanaugh can be impeached. Talking about impeachment before he's even had a vote. Why should we go along with any of this? Here's the New York Slimes. Cheryl Gay Stolberg, The woman who has accused Judge Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault has told the Senate Judiciary Committee in an apparent bid to jumpstart negotiations that, quote, she would be prepared to testify next week, unquote, so long as senators offer, listen to this, terms that are fair and which ensure her safety. According to an email her lawyer sent to committee staff members. Terms that are fair and ensure her safety? In the email obtained by the New York Times, it wasn't obtained by the New York Times, it was given to the New York Times by her lawyers or by Schumer's people. The lawyer for Christine Blasey Ford said that testifying Monday, the timetable Republicans have set for a hearing, is not possible, and the committee's insistence that it occur then is arbitrary in any event. So, now we have the accuser who delayed the provision of this information to the committee, who wanted to keep quiet. Now we have her saying, you don't get to decide this committee. What are you in a rush for? She sat on it. Now she's worried about the committee being in a rush. The lawyer reiterated that it is Dr. Blasey's I thought her name was Dr. Ford. New York Times even has a screw up in this. It is Dr. Ford's, quote, strong preference, unquote, that a full investigation occur before her testimony. Wording that stops short of demanding an FBI probe and suggested she's open to testifying without one. Well, what does this mean? She wants a full investigation first. This is her third or fourth position. Because the Democrats are playing this. Okay, well, the FBI is not going to do that. Just say you want a full investigation. Then we'll be talking about that for 76 hours or 92 hours or whatever. Dr. Blasey has accused Judge Kavanaugh, and they tell us what she's accused him of. In the email addressed to top Republican and Democratic aides on the committee, the lawyer Deborah Katz, big left-wing Democrat, wrote that she would like to set up a call later on Thursday, quote, to discuss the conditions, unquote, under which her client would be prepared to testify. You know what? Just subpoena her. She wants to testify. Subpoena her to appear on Monday. Subpoena her first thing in the morning. Caller had a good idea, called the other day. Subpoena her. You either appear or you don't appear. We're ready to hear what you have to say, the committee should say. You've now been subpoenaed. You're messing around with our constitutional advise and consent power. You're messing around with the Supreme Court nomination process. You're messing around with the United States Senate. That's enough. We're not going to be played this way by you, that is the lawyers, Schumer, or any of the rest of them. You're subpoenaed. Now either show up or don't show up. We're not negotiating anything. You have something to say? Now come out in public and say it, rather than have the Democrats, your lawyers, and your surrogates leaking around and spinning and all the rest of it. Let's get to the bottom of it. I'll be right back. Now, so they're negotiating on whether or not the accuser will be brought before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Monday. Her lawyer, Deborah Katz, a well-known Democrat liberal hack, has indicated Monday is too soon. I have a question for you, ladies and gentlemen. Why is it too soon? The control over the provision of this information was in the accuser's hands. I don't understand. What's too soon? She wants a full investigation, not necessarily by the FBI. Prior to that, an FBI investigation. Democrats are singing along like a chorus line right behind her because they're manipulating the situation, obviously. If she wanted a full investigation, let's think, let's just be rational human beings for a moment, okay? Put the media aside. Get them out of your ear. Here's my question to you. Brett Kavanaugh has been on this Trump list for like a year or more. Then there was a whole lot of discussion when Anthony Kennedy retired back in June. That's, by my calculation, 3 months ago. Kavanaugh was among those on the list of 2, 3, 4. He was one of the ones under consideration. Why didn't the accuser come forward then? Well, she wanted to keep it silent. You know, she didn't want anyone to know. Okay. When she decided to come forward, she goes to her congressman and then to the Washington Post? If she wants to stop Kavanaugh from being on the Supreme Court, or if she wants a full vetting of what took place, her allegation that is, why would you conduct yourself this way? Well, she repressed or suppressed her memory. Well, she's in full-throat attack mode now. I don't understand what happened between June and September. I mean, we're talking about 36 years. So what happened between this June and this September? That all of a sudden she can't wait to talk. First she didn't want to talk. Now she wants conditions before she'll talk. Now they're in negotiations with the Senate Judiciary Committee. She wants a fair hearing and she wants to be safe. And by the way, Kavanaugh's life has been threatened too, just so you know. Kavanaugh put out a statement 30 minutes ago saying, I'll be there Monday. My name and character have been attacked. I intend to defend it. That's what somebody says when they truly believe or know that they're innocent. Now, he's not going to convince a single Democrat. Not a single one. And by the way, Cory Booker should recuse himself. Cory Booker is a confessed groper. Well, he was only in high school. Exactly. That's what we're talking about here. So Cory Booker should recuse himself. He should remove himself from this hearing. Because he's a confessed groper. When he was in high school, he groped. I just read his own words. So he should be off the committee right now. He should not participate in the hearings. It would be an embarrassment to the nation to have a groper Cory Booker on the committee involved in this. It's my Spartacus moment. No, it's not, you idiot. You groper. And there's not even an allegation. There's a confession. This whole thing is tawdry, and we, the American people, don't have to sit by and be spoon-fed this stuff. We just don't. I'm starting now I don't know how many hours on this. We dealt with it last week before I left. We dealt with it most of the show yesterday. And we're dealing with it now. We know nothing about Dr. Ford, and yet these Democrats immediately rush to her side. Hollywood immediately rushes to her side. What does Hollywood know about her? Absolutely nothing. Kavanaugh is the victim here. Kavanaugh is the victim. Anita Hill even wrote yesterday in her pathetic op-ed that it is Kavanaugh that needs to persuade everybody that he didn't do these things. It's impossible for that to actually occur. I didn't throw a stone through my neighbor's window. Well, you have to prove you didn't. Well, how am I supposed to prove I didn't? This is exactly why our justice system is built the other way. It's built the other way. This is why we have Miranda rights. This is why you have due process rights. This is why in our system we spend an enormous amount of time and resources in trying to make sure that people who are accused of things are actually guilty. We even create different levels of proof. And in the criminal matter, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt. Hello. Beyond a reasonable doubt. An accuser who can remember almost nothing, that's not beyond a reasonable doubt. There's not a court in this country that would accept that. You remember the Duke lacrosse players, right? You remember the Duke lacrosse players? Virtually the entire nation, all the elitists, even the professors at Duke, guilty, 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 guilty as a result of the accusations. Every one of those kids was innocent. Every one of them. In some cases, it destroyed them forever, psychologically and otherwise. That's why we have a system. We also have a confirmation system that has been destroyed by the Democrats for the last 3 decades. We have a confirmation system. You don't get to just accuse somebody who has a long record of treating people with respect, of collegiality, a long career, and then all of a sudden you step up after the hearing in Clarence Thomas's case, after the hearing in this case. See, the pattern here that exists is the pattern of the left and the Democrat Party and the radical kook lawyers who are all involved in this, and all their little left-wing groups behind the scenes funded by Soros. I know exactly what's going on here. So do you. We don't have to play along with this crap. It is possible, of course, that this accuser was molested. But I doubt it very seriously by Kavanaugh. And if she was, and I don't know if she was or not, she's going to have to come forward with just a little bit more information. Otherwise, it begins and ends right now. And so, Mr. Kavanaugh has less rights than a serial murderer. Mr. Kavanaugh has less rights than a serial rapist. Mr. Kavanaugh has less rights than a terrorist because there's an accusation, whether any substantiation or corroboration whatsoever. Can you imagine what a lawyer would do to this accuser on the stand? When you're defending a client, the gloves are off. And the system expects the gloves to be off. When you're in a courtroom, and I don't even think it would get to trial. I don't think it would get past summary motions. Your allegations have to be supported with some level of credibility, with some substantive support. Now, that said, if the accuser were on the witness stand and being cross-examined by defense counsel, would Gillibrand be saying that's bullying? Would Gillibrand be saying that's not right? Would the accuser's lawyer, Deborah Katz, be saying, what's the rush? Would the accuser's lawyer be saying, you can't ask those kinds of questions? While the jury is sitting there watching and listening to all of it? And the judge is saying, the test here is beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt. How do you think this witness, in this plaintiff/witness, how do you think this plaintiff/witness would do, based on the information we have from the free press right now? How do you think this witness/plaintiff would do? Very, very poorly. Now imagine if you have that situation and the jury is 49% people who've already declared in advance of anything that she's believable. Well, what would you have? You'd have a mockery. The Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee, collectively, are a mockery. I'll be right back. So listen to the cacophony of kooks, starting with Adam Schiff on the Morning Schmo Show, Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. These two, of course, are the quintessential moral couple. Enough said. Cut 4, go.
Do you believe that Dr. Ford should testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Monday, as she's been invited?
I hope that she does, because I'm afraid that what the Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee really want is they want her to go away. They don't want the country to hear from her. And
whoa. They want the country to hear from her. The sooner the better. Who said they don't want to hear from her? Who said they don't want to hear from her? First, her lawyers said she didn't want to testify. Now they're negotiating terms. You don't get to negotiate terms. The hell gets to negotiate terms with the United States Senate? So we're negotiating terms. The Republicans don't want to hear from her. It's the Democrats who didn't bring her up during the course of the hearings. The Republicans don't want to hear from her. I don't even know what their voice sounds like. I'd love to hear from her. Oh, you're a bully. Now what? I said I want to hear from her. Monday, sooner the better. Wow, you're a bully. Must be an old white man. Then we get that crap. Go ahead.
Hear from her live and on television. She's absolutely right. The FBI should do a thorough vetting of these allegations.
See, this guy is such a sleazeball. Well, why didn't the FBI do a thorough vetting of Hillary Clinton? There's another female that could have had a thorough vetting with the Espionage Act and so forth. But no, you don't understand. Those allegations do not deserve a thorough vetting. The allegations about Hillary Clinton's campaign and the dossier, those do not deserve a thorough vetting. But the allegations 36 years ago, without specifics, and having nothing to do with actual federal law enforcement, those deserve an FBI vetting. Now you know what a schmuck this guy Adam Schiff is. Go ahead.
Simply rely on hearing two conflicting accounts and decide, well, we're okay with not knowing. We're okay with the fact that we might be putting someone who committed attempted rape on the Supreme Court of the United States.
So we're always saying, here we are. We're okay with putting somebody who committed attempted rape on the United States Supreme Court. It's so sickening, so disgusting that this man, simply because the President of the United States is trying to elevate him to the Supreme Court, is put through this and treated like this. And Adam Schiff is an ambulance-chasing demagogue. Now he found an investigation he can actually get behind. This is a soulless ignoramus. Go ahead.
We should get to the bottom of this, and it wouldn't take that long to do.
We're not going to get to the bottom of this, you idiot. We're never going to get to the bottom of this. And if this were a court of law, be thrown out. Get to the bottom of what? Well, who did it? Did he do it? How are you going to get to the bottom of it? Go ahead.
This is the same crowd that waited a year to fill the last vacancy.
The same crowd that waited a year to fill the last vacancy. You see how the propaganda goes? They followed the Biden-Obama standard when they were senators. And they made it clear that George W. Bush must not nominate anyone for the United States Supreme Court in the last year of his term. So they turn around and Obama does exactly that. They want to replace the great Antonin Scalia with a liberal. With a liberal. And because the Republicans didn't go along with it, now every single Republican nominee is to be blocked. Last time I checked, this president's been in office less than 2 years. It's not the last year of his term, of his first term. Go ahead.
On the Supreme Court, so why this rush? And I think
there's no rush. The question is, why did she wait a month and a half during the course of the hearings? Look, ladies and gentlemen, the Supreme Court is a big deal. And the United States Senate is not the plaything of the Democrat Party. The United States Senate is not the plaything of Professor Ford or her lawyers or George Soros. They've got business to do. They've got things to do. We understand what the Democrats are up to. When it was near Obama leaving office, they wanted to ram home a Supreme Court justice. When the Republicans might lose the Senate, they want to block the confirmation of a Supreme Court justice. And they will do anything for power. Any damn thing they can. They have backed perverts. They backed a man who allowed a woman to die. They have backed Klansmen. It doesn't matter. They want power. They want to retain power. They cannot tolerate the idea that there may be another justice of the Supreme Court who actually wishes to follow the Constitution of the United States. That is unacceptable. These people are totalitarian in mindset. They are tyrannical. Can you imagine if they controlled everything? You wouldn't recognize the country. I'll be right back. Let's see here. Who did I want to get? Chris Coons. He's a senator from Delaware. And he's on MSNBC today. And I want you to listen to what he has to say. Cut 5, go.
If we look back at how Professor Anita Hill was treated by the Judiciary Committee, how many other survivors of assault have been treated in this country.
I don't know that she was a survivor of assault. Where's the evidence that she was assaulted? We never did see any evidence that Anita Hill was assaulted. That wasn't even the issue, whether she was assaulted. Her claim, which also was never demonstrated to be truthful, was harassment. Go ahead.
Over generations, there is a completely understandable fear or hesitation to be put in the limelight and miscast as sort of she said, he said.
This is amazing to me. They're manipulating this entire process. They're manipulating the propaganda. You can't win. You can only lose. Okay, we want to hear from her. The sooner the better. Well, then you're a bully. She's not ready. Okay, now she wants to be heard. Well, she'll be miscast, but she ought to be on TV, Adam Schiff says. Listen to all this stuff. Go ahead.
Here, it is Judge Kavanaugh who's been nominated for a lifetime appointment on the Supreme Court, one of the most important roles in our republic, in our constitutional order. And so, frankly, the burden should more be on him to present witnesses and to
There you go. The burden should be on you to present witnesses to say, no, I did not molest her when I was 17 years old in high school. The burden should be on the accused. Now, under what rational system is that the case? Because the left is nuts? Because they're power hungry? Because they want to sabotage this nomination? Really? So let's say Chris Coons is accused of something. Is the burden on him, given the fact that he's an old white male? This case is not about the history of women in society. This case isn't even about women in society. This case is about an allegation which so far has had no substantial support of any kind, and I base that on the reports. I never met the woman. I never spoke to her. That is time to create the greatest amount of political tumult and make it increasingly more difficult for the President of the United States to get his nominee on the Supreme Court. That's what it's about. It's not about what happened to women in 1921 and so forth and so on. And now we learn that the accuser is being advised by a Democrat operative. By a Democrat operative. See if I can find it here. I'll find it during the break among my heavy pile of information here. She's being advised by a Democratic operative. So this whole thing stinks of politics because it's saturated with politics. All right. Let's take some calls, shall we? Let's do it. Let us go to Cindy, Rossland, Michigan, XM Satellite. Go right ahead.
Hi, Mr. Levin. First of all, I do not buy that Professor Ford had this awakening in July, that it just came back to her. And if she's doing her civic duty by following judiciary appointments so closely, I would like to know why she didn't come forward 12 years ago when Judge Kavanaugh was sworn into the circuit court.
Because she was suppressing her memory. That's the argument.
I don't buy that one bit. You know,
apparently she was suppressing it all the way up to July. All the way up to July, and now she wants to reveal what she knows.
That's just amazing to me. And I would like to know your opinion on this, too, because I just thought of it. Do you think that all of these theatrics and drama and everything would be as bad as it is with this nomination just because it is a midterm election year?
Yeah, I do, actually. I mean, I think the Democrats would manage it perhaps in a different way. But yes, I do. I think they believe they own the United States Supreme Court, and you have to understand why. I mean, they've nationalized our social and cultural issues. They're nationalizing immigration issues. They're nationalizing a lot of issues, and by nationalizing, I don't mean for the national government in the aggregate. I mean by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court gets increasingly more powerful. They want to push their agenda through the Supreme Court, whether they win elections or not. They can count on 5, 6 justices, and it's been their plan for 100 years. That's what they've been doing. And they're not about to give it up. So if they have to destroy Kavanaugh, they'll destroy Kavanaugh. They have to try and destroy Clarence Thomas, they'll destroy him. Robert Bork, destroy him. As a matter of fact, the smarter these guys are, and the more faithful they are to the text and the original meaning of the Constitution and its language, the more they're the enemy. Because progressivism is the enemy of constitutionalism. Thank you for your call, my friend. Let's see. Let us go to Kevin, Newport, Rhode Island, the great WPRV. Go.
Hey, Mark. Love your show. Great show.
Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to draw a historical analogy. In the last few months, you've been discussing how the sitting president cannot be indicted by any prosecutor or some state attorney.
I've been saying that's the position of the United States Department of Justice for almost a half a century.
Well, I wanted to transfer that also to apply to Supreme Court judges or federal judges, that they can't be harassed by any...
No, but they can be indicted, and the distinction is you have one president. And if that president is forced by a single prosecutor to, in the end, potentially be imprisoned or to go through the trial process or to be charged, then the single prosecutor is more powerful than all of the other branches of the government combined.
Agreed.
If you're charging any judge, a Supreme Court justice, or a member of Congress, it's just not the same case.
Okay.
Make sense?
It does.
All right, my friend. Thank you for your call. Gary, Huntsville, Alabama. How are you?
Hey, I'm well, Mark. Thank you for taking my call.
You got it.
My daughter and her husband are...
WVNN, by the way, the great affiliate there. Go ahead.
That's right. They are recent graduates of University of Alabama Law School, and they told me that this columnist, this op-ed writer, is a communist nut job. They had him for constitutional law.
Well, I can't say that he is that, obviously, on the air, but you're telling me he's a leftist.
He's a leftist. Strong and firm, yes.
Mm-hmm. Krotozinski, I believe his name is, right?
Something like Zinski. I'm not sure. Yeah, Krotozinski, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
he's a leftist, and he demonstrates that in his op-ed, which is a pathetic op-ed. But notice the New York Times gives lots of space for the kooks. You notice that?
They do. Yes.
And I've told you about the history of the New York Times. Are you a regular listener?
I am, almost every night.
And I've told you and the whole country about the New York Times and the record of the New York Times when it came to the Holocaust, right?
Yes.
That the Holocaust they pushed to the back pages to the extent they reported on it at all, that they censored photographs. They've since admitted this decades later. And let me ask you a question, Gary. If a newspaper in the teeth of the Holocaust, with massive, horrific genocide, decides that it is going to protect its good name by trying to ingratiate itself with elements in the United States that would find such reporting offensive or troubling, how the hell does that newspaper remain the paper of record? How the hell does that newspaper have any credibility whatsoever?
As is usual, you have posed an excellent question and one for which there is no real answer. You're right.
The left has a high tolerance for everybody else's suffering. Have you noticed that?
They do.
All right, my friend. Thank you for your call. I love Huntsville, Alabama. It's a wonderful, wonderful town. We'll be right back. Have you noticed how incurious the media are about Dr. Ford. Have you noticed that, Mr. Producer? She is a professor at a average quality college. Well, where did she get the money for her lawyers? Maybe it's her own money. Could well be. The lie detector test was apparently taken in one of her lawyers' offices. Whose idea was that? And we don't believe in attorney-client privilege anymore in this country, as you all well know, so with whom have her attorneys been colluding? Which members of the Senate Judiciary Committee? Which staffers on the Senate Judiciary Committee? How about Schumer and his staff? Which media types have they been leaking to? Have they been colluding with? Will the media, in fact, pursue any of this? It's a good question, isn't it? I'd like to know. But they're not going to. They don't want to know anything. Just look at them, listen to them, watch them. They're fools. All right. Let's see here. Let's go to a couple of calls if we can. Brian, Studio City, California. Guys, would you put the call letters up? That would be very, very helpful. The great KRLA. Go.
Hello, Mr. Levin. I thank you for taking my call.
You got
it. I just wanted to tell you that perhaps we should go by the standards of the left and with the infinite wisdom of Nancy Pelosi when she said when they passed Obamacare, why don't we just pass the bill to find out what's in it? Why don't they just confirm Kavanaugh to find out how he rules in the court? I mean, that's their standard, right?
Not a bad point, my friend. It's always good to point out their hypocrisy because they're dripping with it. All right, brother. Thank you for your call. Scotty, New York, the great WABC. Go.
Hey, Mark. How you doing, bud?
Okay.
It's amazing to see how low the left has gone. They won't go any lower. That now you have members of Congress with a anti-Kavanaugh slogan. You have the people in Hollywood with this anti-Kavanaugh. I mean, Mark, it doesn't end. These people are disgusting, and it just doesn't end.
No, it doesn't end. As a matter of fact, it gets worse by the day, doesn't it? None of us ever thought Kavanaugh would be in this position, did we? Nope. I'll be right back. How much more can you handle? I think you can handle a lot more, because this is being done to your country. First of all, the accuser doesn't get to set the terms for a Senate hearing. But let's go on. Just so you can hear the kind of idiocy that is going on here. Let's go with Kirsten Gillibrand on CNN today. Go ahead.
I stand with her, and she is being bullied by this committee. It's outrageous that this committee has not moved forward despite the rest of the world. They're stuck in decades ago. They literally are frozen in time, and not only should she be given the opportunity to testify, which she has asked for, she has asked to cooperate, she's asked for an investigation, which is the minimum that should be afforded her. She will want to have the corroborating witnesses testify too, so the full story can be testified to under oath. And so I believe her. I stand with her. And
do you hope she shows up on Monday? Do you hope that she testifies?
I don't think she should be bullied into this scenario where it's a he said, she said, where many members of the committee have already made up their minds. Without the benefit of an FBI investigation where it's nonpartisan and objective, and without the benefit of corroborating witnesses being able to testify, it's a sham hearing. And I don't think she should participate in it.
What? What? So you see, it's a sham hearing, ladies and gentlemen. It's a sham hearing. And Jim Acosta is a moron. Of course, he wants it to be a sham hearing, too. I stand with her, says Gillibrand. She's being bullied by this committee. It's outrageous that this committee has not moved forward despite the rest of the world. What does that mean? They're stuck in decades ago. Among other things, she's illiterate. So she's attacking men here, of course. They're literally frozen in time. Not only should she be given the opportunity to testify, which she has asked for, she's asked to cooperate. She's asked for an investigation, which is the minimum that should be afforded her. Well, what's the maximum that should be afforded her? She's asked for an investigation, which is the minimum. She will want to have the corroborating witnesses testify too. So the full story can be testified to under oath. And so I believe her. I stand with her. You believe what? There hasn't even been any testimony. There hasn't even been any witnesses. Are you as stupid as you sound? Yes, she is. Why don't you invite Ms. Gillibrand on the program, Mr. Producer? I'm serious. Do you hope she shows on Monday? Do you hope that she testifies as Jim Acosta? Fair enough. I don't think she should be bullied into this scenario where it's a he said, she said, where many members of the committee have already made up their minds. Without the benefit of an FBI investigation where it's not partisan and objective, and without the benefit of corroborating witnesses being able to testify, it's a sham hearing. And I don't think she should participate in it. See? This is what it must have been like, seriously, to live in the Soviet Union when you're accused of something. All the weight goes to the accuser. All the benefits of doubt go to the accuser. The entire system is built for the accuser. When it comes to the Senate Judiciary Committee, folks, the Senate Judiciary Committee, and the Democrats in particular, have turned this entire process into a disaster. An ugly disaster. This would be the same Congress that set up these secret ethics arrangements where they would use your tax dollars to settle their sexual harassment claims. This is the same Gillibrand who testified arm in arm with Bill Clinton when it was to her benefit, raising money and all the rest, then decided to throw him overboard a year ago when she felt she would ride this issue into the presidency. Then we have John Garamendi. This guy's been a clown in California for decades. Notice how they all say the same thing and all sound so stupid? Cut 7, go.
Just think about this. Women for decades have faced this situation. They've always, when they come forward with an accusation of assault or rape, they become the victim in the hearing. And we've got to put a stop to that. Women across this nation should be outraged at what these white men senators are doing to this woman. This woman needs a fair hearing, as every woman does.
Shut up, you idiot. There's an old white man. As these white men are doing? Aren't you sick of this? Here's Stephanie Rule, a host at MSLSD. Cut 8, go.
Brett Kavanaugh is a father. He does have young daughters. He does have a stellar reputation. So does it not surprise you that if he were to get confirmed, wouldn't he not want to have this cloud over him? People say he's got an unblemished record. This is a big old blemish either way, yet he's remaining silent and not calling for an investigation.
Huh? Listen, I've been accused of something that I didn't do. The person coming forward has really set me up. Waited till after the hearings and so forth and so on. I'm innocent. But you know what? I want to be browbeaten and attacked and smeared on TV in order to get my good name back. Is that it, you clown? I think that's about it. Then, of course, Hollywood supports Dr. Ford. They don't know her. They never met her. Doesn't matter. Hollywood supports. We have actresses. Julianne Moore, Eva Longoria, of course, America Ferrara, Marisa Tomei, Gabriel Union, and Amber Tamblyn, and I don't know half of them. Cut 9, go.
Dear Professor Ford, we know how difficult it is to stand up to powerful people.
We want to thank you for publicly sharing your story of sexual violence.
as members of the Senate determine whether Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh.
This context is critical.
The behavior you described was wrong.
Wrong. He should not be confirmed.
He should not be confirmed.
Wait a minute. There hasn't even been any testimony yet. What about the corroborating witnesses that Gillibrand says exists? And what about that? How does Gillibrand know they're corroborating witnesses? Have you and I heard about corroborating witnesses? I've scanned all the recent media. I'm not aware of corroborating witnesses. Are you? How does Gillibrand know they're corroborating witnesses? So Kavanaugh should have been stopped before the accuser was known. Kavanaugh should be stopped now before there's testimony, and Kavanaugh should be stopped if there is testimony. Get the point? What's the point of this? Just go out and hang them. Go out and hang them. That's it. That's the beginning and the end of it. I'll be right back. Now that little bit of Hollywood genius was produced by MoveOn.org, which of course is the left-wing radical nutjob site. They produce no such thing, these Hollywood types, for Juanita Broderick, Paula Jones, Kathleen Willey, or a host of other women who Bill Clinton sexually molested. They didn't do it for Monica Lewinsky. So this is not I don't remember Gillibrand standing up for any of these women. She was an adult at the time. I don't remember it. She's so serious about this issue. I don't remember all those old white men Democrats and all those old white men in the media standing up. Do you, ladies and gentlemen? No, I don't. No, I don't. You know, these people are stupid, and they're getting dumber by the day, and they drag down the country. They just do. How do these people become senators? Is there a requirement that you have to have a low IQ to become a senator because you really can't run a cash register at a 7-Eleven or a Wawa? Wawa. Here's a friend of Christine Ford. Her name is Samantha Gurry. She was on CNN yesterday. And she's being interviewed by Jim Acosta. Now listen to this entire exchange. Cut 10, go.
And do you know Brett Kavanaugh at all?
I did. He was an acquaintance of mine in high school.
And did he have this reputation for excessive drinking during that time?
No. You're confusing him with Matt Lauer, actually. Go ahead.
Can't really speak to that because
what about
he wasn't
what
directly...
Dr. Ford is alleging? Was this the first time you had heard anything like that with respect to Judge Kavanaugh?
Absolutely. It's not the first time I've heard anything like that in terms of the community of women that I know, and not regarding him, but...
Those sorts of things went on.
A lot. One of the things that's been surprising to me as I've gotten involved in this in the last couple of days is how many women of my class have come forward to me in this the last few days and said, I had similar experiences in high school, and this hits me very deeply. And it's very
not with Brett Kavanaugh, but with other boys. Not with Brett
Kavanaugh, but with other boys in our community, and we all feel that if we were in her shoes, we'd want to be taken seriously as well.
What? So it has nothing to do with Brett Kavanaugh, but they'd want to be taken seriously if we were in her shoes. Well, who's not taking her seriously? It's her conduct now, 36 years later, from July to today, that is bizarre. It is the comments by members of Congress who are exploiting this situation that are troublesome, deeply troublesome. And I don't enjoy playing these clips. This is not what I think radio should be all about, but you have to hear these people. You have to hear these people. William in Georgia on the Mark Levin app. Be tremendous. Go.
Mark, fantastic. Listen, what are the consequences for all this?
Which now?
He's got these girls that make accusations, like the lady with the lacrosse team, and they found in a sense. What did she get reprimanded? I mean, what are the consequences for all this stuff going on?
I just think you have a political party, the Democrat Party. It's not just this. It's other stratums within our culture and our society where they are politically burning things down, literally destroying them. And these are people, and this is a party that rejects traditional Americanism. And if you tell them that, they act, they're rambunctious about it. Well, I don't know why. That's what they're doing. They are destroying our education system. They're destroying our sovereignty at the border. They undermine our military. They undermine law enforcement. This is a very, very evil force that's been imported from the philosophies of Germany. Hegel, Marx, and their ilk. Ladies and gentlemen, we salute all you heroes out there, and we really do appreciate all you do. And I want to thank you, my beloved audience. We'll be here tomorrow. God bless you.